It was December 4th, 2025 at 2:47 a.m. when I collapsed in my prayer room after 16 hours of fasting, and Jesus appeared with tears streaming down his face that revealed a catastrophic spiritual event targeting seniors on December 7th, just 3 days away, that would separate the faithful from the deceived forever. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked. You've been marked because you're here, right now, in this moment. And I need you to understand something before we go any further. What I'm about to share with you isn't comfortable. It's not going to fit into your Sunday morning Christianity. It's not going to make you feel warm and fuzzy inside. But it's true, and it might be the last warning you ever receive. Before I tell you what Jesus showed me, before I reveal what's coming on December 7th, I need you to do something. Right now, in the comments below, type out your prayer request. Don't think about it. Don't edit it. Just let your heart speak. Because what's coming in this message, you're going to need prayer. You're going to need a community of believers who aren't afraid to stand in the gap. And listen, if you're serious about this, if you're truly one of the ones who's been marked to receive this warning, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. Not later. Not when you get around to it. Right now. Because I'm telling you, YouTube doesn't want you to see these messages. The algorithm fights against truth. It buries messages like this under cat videos and cooking shows and celebrities. The only way you'll see what I'm going to share over the next 3 nights is if you subscribe and turn on notifications. This isn't about numbers for me. This is about survival, spiritual survival. Some of you know me as the actor who plays Jesus in The Chosen. You've seen me portray the tenderness of Christ, the mercy, the love, and yes, all of that is real. All of that is true. But what you're about to hear is not me acting. This is not a script someone handed me. This is not a performance. This is my testimony. This is what happened to me, starting 72 hours ago. And I'm still shaking. Let me take you back to that night. December 4th, 2:47 a.m. I had been in my prayer room since the previous morning. I do this sometimes, extended fasting and prayer, when I feel the Lord pressing on my spirit. My wife knows. She brings me water. She prays outside the door, but she gives me space to wrestle with God. The room was dark, except for a single candle flickering on a small table. I had my Bible open to Revelation, though I'd stopped reading hours ago. I was just waiting, listening. My knees ached. My back was stiff. My stomach had stopped growling around hour 12. Now there was just this hollow feeling, this emptiness that I've learned to recognize as readiness. That's when the temperature dropped. It plummeted. My breath suddenly became visible in the air. The candle flame turned from orange to blue. I'd never seen anything like it. And the silence, God, the silence became so heavy it pressed against my eardrums. You know that feeling right before a thunderstorm when all the birds stop singing and even the insects go quiet? It was like that, but 1,000 times more intense. I opened my eyes, and he was there. Jesus stood 5 feet in front of me. And I'm telling you, no matter how many times I've studied his character, no matter how many scenes I've filmed portraying him, nothing prepared me for the reality of his presence. His robe was white, but not the white of fabric. It was the white of light itself, of absolute purity that hurt to look at directly. His feet were bare, and I could see the scars. I could see them, and something in my chest cracked open. His hands hung at his sides. And yes, the scars were there too. But it was his face that undid me. His eyes were red, swollen. Tears tracked down his cheeks in steady streams. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice was like honey and thunder mixed together. "Why do you think I'm weeping?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. I just shook my head. "I'm weeping," he continued, "because in 3 days, on December 7th, 2025, a deception is going to sweep through the senior community, through those I call my wisdom keepers, my faithful ones who have served me for decades. And it will separate the sheep from the goats faster than anything since the early church." He moved closer, and the light from his presence cast shadows that shouldn't have been possible. The shadows moved on their own, showing me images, visions. "What they're calling progress," Jesus said. "What they're calling innovation and security and protection. It's a trap. And my people, Jonathan, they're walking right into it because they've been taught to trust the system more than they trust me." I found my voice. "Lord, what are you talking about? What's happening on December 7th? His expression shifted, and I saw anger flash across his face. Not at me, but at something else. Something I couldn't yet see. "Show him," he said, though I didn't know who he was talking to. "Show him what they're planning." Suddenly, the walls of my prayer room dissolved, and I was floating, above a massive auditorium. Thousands of seniors filled the seats. They were well-dressed, smiling, chatting with each other. On the stage, slick presenters with perfect teeth and expensive suits were giving a presentation. "New financial protection software," one of them announced. "Guaranteed to protect your retirement accounts from scams, from fraud, from market manipulation. Endorsed by the government, approved by major banks, and absolutely free for seniors over 65. The crowd applauded. I watched their faces light up with relief. "All you need to do," the presenter continued, "is link all your accounts through our secure portal by December 7th. That's this Saturday. Anyone who registers by midnight on December 7th gets lifetime premium protection absolutely free." Jesus appeared beside me in the vision, his tears falling like rain now. "Do you see it?" he asked. "Do you see the hook hidden in the bait?" I'm not sure, Lord," I admitted. He waved his hand, and suddenly I could see through the presentation, behind it, into the spiritual realm. Dark entities swarmed around the presenters, whispering into their ears. Chains materialized, wrapping around each senior who nodded in agreement, who pulled out their phones to register, who whispered to their spouses, "This sounds perfect for us." "They're not just linking their bank accounts," Jesus said quietly. "They're signing over their autonomy. Within 30 days, every person who registers will find themselves locked out of making their own financial decisions. The software will flag suspicious activity, which means anything that supports my church, my missionaries, my work, donations to ministries, flagged and blocked, purchases of Bibles or Christian materials, questioned and reported, wire transfers to help persecuted Christians overseas, denied." My heart was pounding. "But Lord, that's targeting believers specifically." "Yes," he said, and his voice cracked with emotion. "That's exactly what it is. The enemy has been patient. He's been strategic. He waited until the generation that remembers real persecution had grown old, until they were vulnerable, until they were desperate for security in their final years. And now, he's springing the trap. The vision shifted. I saw an elderly woman. She must have been 75, maybe 80, sitting at her kitchen table, crying. She was trying to make a donation to her church online, but the transaction kept being declined. Her phone rang. A polite voice on the other end. "Mrs. Henderson, we've noticed some concerning financial activity on your account. For your protection, we've temporarily limited your ability to make certain transactions. This is for your safety." "But I'm just trying to tithe," she protested. "We understand, Mrs. Henderson, but our AI has flagged this organization as potentially fraudulent. We're protecting you from being scammed. It's my church. I've been going there for 40 years. We're sorry, Mrs. Henderson. It's out of our hands. The system has made the determination." I watched her hang up the phone and stare at her trembling hands. The light in her eyes. It was like watching hope die. Kassa's gripped my shoulder, and the intensity of his touch sent electricity through my entire body. "This is just the beginning," he said. "December 7th is the registration deadline, but by January 7th, 30 days later, 70% of seniors who signed up will be completely locked out of supporting my kingdom work. Their money will be their own, technically, but they won't be able to use it for what matters. They'll be able to buy groceries, pay bills, take vacations. But when they try to obey me, when they try to be generous, when they try to support the poor, or the missionaries, or the persecuted church, blocked, denied, flagged. This is evil," I whispered. "Yes," Jesus agreed. "And the worst part? Most of my church won't recognize it as evil. They'll think it's just modern technology, just helpful software, just protection from scams. They've been conditioned to accept convenience over conviction, security over sacrifice." The vision dissolved, and I was back in my prayer room on my knees. Jesus stood before me, still weeping. "Jonathan, I need you to warn them. I need you to sound the alarm. December 7th is in 3 days. 3 days. Anyone who registers by that deadline will be caught in this net, and it will take supernatural intervention to break them free." "But Lord," I said, "how do I convince them? How do I make them understand?" He knelt down beside me, Jesus, the King of Kings, kneeling beside me, and he took my face in his scarred hands. "You tell them the truth. You tell them what you saw. You tell them that I'm weeping over this, that I'm mourning for my beloved ones who are about to be deceived. You tell them that the enemy always attacks the vulnerable first, the elderly, the sick, the isolated, because he knows that's where he can do the most damage with the least resistance." His thumbs wiped tears from my cheeks. I hadn't even realized I was crying. "And you tell them this," he continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I'm not asking them to live in fear. I'm asking them to live in wisdom. I'm asking them to test every spirit, to question every solution that sounds too good to be true, to remember that my yoke is easy and my burden is light. But the enemy's chains always start out feeling like silk." He stood up, and the light around him intensified until I had to shield my eyes. "Tomorrow night," he said, "I'll show you more. I'll show you the specific names and faces of those behind this deception. I'll show you how deep this goes. But tonight, I needed you to see the battlefield. I needed you to understand what's at stake." "Lord, wait," I called out, but he was already fading. "Warn them, Jonathan. Warn them before December 7th. Some will listen, some won't, but you'll know you did what I asked." And then he was gone. The candle returned to normal flame. The temperature rose. The silence lifted, and I was alone in my prayer room at 4:15 a.m., shaking so hard I could barely stand. I sat there for another 2 hours, just processing what I'd seen, writing notes with trembling hands, praying for wisdom, asking God if I'd really seen what I thought I'd seen, or if I was just exhausted and hallucinating from the fasting. But I knew. Deep in my spirit, I knew it was real. And I knew I had to tell you. Listen to me carefully. If you're a senior, or if you have seniors in your life, parents, grandparents, mentors, from church, you need to pay attention to what's being offered to them over these next 3 days. Any financial protection software, any free security systems, any programs that require linking all their accounts by December 7th. Do not do it. I don't care how legitimate it looks. I don't care who endorses it. I don't care if the government is pushing it or if major banks are promoting it. It's a trap. And Jesus himself is weeping over the souls who are about to walk into it with their eyes closed. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Jonathan, this sounds paranoid. This sounds like conspiracy theory nonsense. And you know what? I would have thought the same thing 72 hours ago. I would have dismissed this. I would have rolled my eyes and kept scrolling. But I saw his face. I saw his tears. And I'm telling you, when the creator of the universe shows up in your prayer room at 2:47 in the morning, with tears streaming down his face, you don't question whether it's real. You just obey. Tomorrow night, and I mean this, tomorrow night at exactly this time, I'm going to share what Jesus showed me in the second encounter, because he came back on December 5th. He came back with even more details, even more warnings, and what he revealed about who's behind this deception. It's going to shake you, but I need you to do something for me right now. Before you click away, before you move on to the next video, I need you to share this message. Send it to every senior you know. Post it in your church groups. Email it to your parents. Text it to your grandparents. Because we have 3 days, just 3 days before December 7th. And after that deadline passes, the trap springs shut, and I need you to pray. Pray for discernment. Pray for wisdom. Pray that the Lord would open the eyes of his people to see what's really happening beneath the surface of these helpful programs and protective measures. This isn't about living in fear. This is about living in wisdom. This is about remembering that our God is not a God of confusion. And he's not a God who needs the government or the banks or the technology companies to protect his people. He's the protector. He's the provider. He's the shield and the strong tower. And when someone else offers to do his job for him, we need to ask why. Tomorrow night, I'll tell you exactly why. Tomorrow night, I'll share the names Jesus gave me, the connections he showed me, the network of deception that's been built over the last 5 years specifically to target this moment, this deadline, this December 7th date. But tonight, I just need you to know, you've been warned. The mark is on you now. Not the mark of the beast. Don't misunderstand me. The mark of being chosen to hear this message, to receive this warning, to stand in the gap for those who are vulnerable. Will you do it? Will you sound the alarm? Or will you scroll past and let December 7th come and go without a fight? The choice is yours. But choose. Quickly, we're running out of time. It was December 5th, 2025 at 1:33 a.m. when I gave up trying to sleep and returned to my prayer room. And Jesus appeared without warning. No temperature drop, no flickering lights this time. Just suddenly there, standing in front of my bookshelf with his hand resting on my worn copy of Fox's Book of Martyrs, and he said, "They think persecution has to look like lions and crosses, Jonathan. They don't recognize it when it comes dressed in safety and convenience." I'd spent all of December 4th trying to function normally, trying to return emails, trying to eat breakfast with my family, trying to pretend that everything was fine, that I hadn't just had an encounter with Jesus that shattered my understanding of what's coming. But I couldn't shake it. Couldn't shake the image of his tears. Couldn't shake the elderly woman locked out of her own generosity. Couldn't shake the dark entities swarming around those presenters in their expensive suits. My wife knew something was wrong. She kept asking me if I was okay, and I kept saying yes. But we both knew I was lying. How do you explain to someone that Jesus showed up in your prayer room and revealed a massive deception targeting seniors? How do you say that out loud without sounding insane? But she knows me. She knows when God is moving. So when I told her at midnight that I needed to go back into prayer, she just nodded, kissed my forehead, and said, "I'll be praying outside the door." I wasn't fasting this time. I'd eaten dinner. I was just waiting, sitting in the same spot where he'd appeared 22 hours earlier. The candle was lit again. My Bible was open, though I wasn't really reading. I was just present, available. And that's when he came. No fanfare, no dramatic entrance. He was just suddenly there, solid and real, his finger tracing the gold lettering on the spine of that martyr's book. "Do you know why I'm touching this?" he asked without turning around. "No, Lord," I said quietly, "because the church has forgotten what it costs to follow me. They've forgotten that my earliest followers were hunted, imprisoned, burned alive, fed to animals. They've forgotten that discipleship has always required sacrifice. So when the enemy comes now, not with fire and swords, but with contracts and convenience, they don't recognize the threat. They think, this isn't persecution. This is just modern life. This is just technology." He turned to face me, and his eyes. God, his eyes were different tonight. Still sad. Still brimming with tears. But there was something else there too. Anger. Righteous, holy anger. "Let me show you who's behind this," he said. "Let me show you the network." Before I could respond, the room transformed. We were standing. No, I was standing. He was beside me, in what looked like a corporate boardroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city skyline I didn't recognize. Around a massive glass table sat 7 people. 4 men, 3 women. All of them between 45 and 60. All of them wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. "These are the architects," Jesus said. "These are the ones who designed the trap you saw last night." I studied their faces. They looked normal. Successful, yes. Wealthy, obviously, but not evil, not demonic. Just regular people having a business meeting. Don't be fooled by appearances, Jesus said, reading my thoughts. The enemy's most effective servants rarely look like monsters. They look like entrepreneurs, innovators, philanthropists. One of the men, silver hair, tan skin, a watch that could have bought a car, stood and gestured to a presentation on the wall screen. "Phase 1 is complete," he said. "We've spent 3 years building trust. The beta testing showed a 92% satisfaction rate among seniors. They love the interface. They love the protection. They feel safer." A woman with red-framed glasses nodded. "The partnerships with Medicare and Social Security were crucial. Once we got those endorsements, the resistance crumbled. Who's going to question something the government recommends? Exactly, Silverhair continued. And now we move to phase 2. The December 7th deadline creates urgency. It triggers FOMO, fear of missing out. We've already seen a 40% increase in registrations since we announced the cutoff date. What about the Christian organizations? Another man asked. The churches, the mission groups. How do we handle the backlash when donations get flagged? Silverhair smiled, and something in that smile made my skin crawl. We blame the algorithm. We say, the AI made the determination, not us. We express sympathy. We offer to review the flags manually, a process that takes 4 to 6 weeks conveniently. By the time we approve the transaction, the moment has passed. The missionary didn't get the support they needed. The church-building campaign fell short. The relief organization couldn't respond to the crisis in time. The room erupted in approving murmurs. Someone actually clapped. Jesus' hand tightened into a fist. I could feel the rage radiating off him like heat. Do you see? He said to me. It's calculated. It's intentional. They've spent 3 years building trust, specifically so they could weaponize it at this moment. But Lord, I said, why? What do they gain from stopping charitable giving? His expression softened slightly, becoming infinitely sad, because the enemy knows something most Christians have forgotten. Generosity is spiritual warfare. Every time a believer gives sacrificially, they're declaring that they trust me more than they trust money. They're breaking the power of mammon. They're participating in a my kingdom economy instead of the world's economy. The enemy can't stop people from believing in me. Not entirely, but he can stop them from acting on that belief. He can neutralize them, make them believers in name only. The boardroom scene shifted. Now I was watching a different meeting. This one was in a darker room, more intimate, only 3 people this time. Silverhair was there, but the other 2, I couldn't quite see their faces. Shadows seemed to cling to them unnaturally. Is the spiritual interference in place? One of the shadowed figures asked. The voice was wrong. Too many tones at once, like multiple people speaking in unison. Yes, Silverhair said. We've had teams doing ritual work at the data centers. Every server that hosts the software has been consecrated. The word made me want to vomit. Consecrated. To what? To whom? Jesus must have seen the question on my face. To the enemy, he said simply. To the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that works in the sons of disobedience. They've literally dedicated this technology to demonic purposes. Every person who registers isn't just linking their bank accounts, they're opening a spiritual door. Granting access. The second shadowed figure leaned forward, and for just a moment I caught a glimpse of its face. It wasn't human. Not even close. Eyes like coal, teeth too sharp, skin that seemed to writhe with darkness. I stumbled backward, but Jesus steadied me. Yes, he said. You're seeing clearly. This isn't just a business venture. This is a coordinated attack from the kingdom of darkness. The humans in that boardroom, most of them don't even realize they're being used. They think they're just creating profitable software. But they've opened themselves to demonic influence through their greed, their ambition, their willingness to harm my people for profit. The vision dissolved, and I was back in my prayer room, gasping for air. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Sweat poured down my face despite the cool temperature. Jesus knelt beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Breathe, Jonathan. I know this is overwhelming, but you need to see the full picture. You need to understand what you're up against so you can warn them effectively. Lord, it's so much bigger than I thought. How do we fight this? How do we stop it? He helped me to my feet, his grip strong and steady. You don't stop it, he said. Not entirely. The enemy has a right to build his kingdom in this fallen world, just as I have a right to build mine. But you can warn my people. You can help them see the trap before they walk into it. You can give them the tools to recognize deception. What tools? I asked desperately. What do I tell them? Jesus walked to the small table where my Bible lay open. He flipped pages. I didn't see him look down, but somehow he found exactly what he wanted. His finger landed on 1 John 4:1. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. He read aloud, This is the foundation. My people have stopped testing. They've stopped questioning. They assume that if something comes through official channels, if it's endorsed by authorities, if it's convenient and free, it must be good. He looked up at me, and I saw tears forming again. Jonathan, I didn't promise convenience. I promised abundant life, yes, but through persecution and trials and testing. I told them to count the cost. I told them the road would be narrow. Yet they've been taught by prosperity preachers and comfortable Christianity that following me should be easy, that blessing looks like security and safety and never having to struggle. So this is a test, I said slowly. December the 7th is a test. Everything is a test. He corrected gently. Every moment of every day is a choice between my kingdom and the world's kingdom. But yes, December 7th is a particularly clear choice. A line in the sand. Those who register are saying, I trust the system more than I trust God's provision. Those who refuse are saying, I'd rather be vulnerable in God's hands than safe in the enemy's trap. He closed the Bible and looked at me with such intensity I felt it in my bones. Here's what I need you to tell them. Here's what they need to know before December 7th. I grabbed a pen and paper, my hands shaking. First, he said, tell them to ask this question about any financial software, any protection program. Does this increase my freedom or decrease it? My spirit brings freedom, the enemy brings bondage, disguised as protection. If a program requires you to surrender control, to let an AI or algorithm make decisions for you, to flag and block transactions without your input, that's bondage, not protection. I wrote frantically. Second, tell them to research who's behind it, who created it, who profits from it. Are there any connections to organizations that oppose Christianity, that fund anti-faith initiatives, that have a history of targeting believers? The enemy leaves fingerprints. He's arrogant. He doesn't hide his connections as well as he thinks he does. Third, tell them to pray over any major decision, not just a quick, bless this Lord prayer, real prayer, fasting, seeking counsel from mature believers. If they feel rushed, if there's a deadline creating pressure, if they're being told act now or miss out forever, that's a red flag. I don't operate through manipulation and pressure tactics. I give peace. I give clarity. Even when I ask for quick obedience, there's a deep knowing in the spirit, not a frantic scrambling. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. And fourth, tell them this. I see them. I know their fears. I know they're worried about scams, about running out of money, about being vulnerable in their old age. Those fears are real, and they're valid. But the answer to fear is not surrender to a counterfeit protector. The answer to fear is trust in me. I looked up from my notes, and tears were streaming down my face. Lord, what about the ones who already registered? What about the seniors who signed up before December 7th? Before they heard this warning, are they lost? His face transformed with such compassion it nearly broke me. No one is beyond my reach, Jonathan. But breaking free will be harder. They'll need deliverance. They'll need to renounce the agreement they made. They'll need to close those accounts and start over. It's possible, but it will require courage and faith, and usually some supernatural intervention. Then there's still hope, I said. There's always hope, he replied. But prevention is easier than rescue. That's why the warning needs to go out now. Today, tomorrow, every moment until December 7th. The atmosphere in the room began to shift. I could feel him preparing to leave. Wait, I said quickly. Tomorrow night, will you come again? Will you show me more? Yes, he said, and the light around him began to intensify. Tomorrow night, I'll show you the consequences. I'll show you what happens. In January, in February, in the months following December 7th. I'll show you the devastation this will cause in my church, but I'll also show you the remnant, the ones who refuse the trap, who stand firm, who become beacons of light in the darkness. And I'll show you, he continued, his form beginning to fade, what I'm calling you specifically to do. Not just warn them, but lead them, shepherd them through what's coming. Lord, I'm not qualified, I started, but he cut me off. Neither were the disciples. Neither was Moses. Neither was David. I don't call the qualified, Jonathan. I qualify the called. And then he was gone, and I was alone in my prayer room at 3:47 a.m., surrounded by pages of frantic notes and a holy terror that made sleep impossible. I spent the rest of that night on my face before God, weeping for the seniors who were about to be deceived, praying for the ones who would hear and heed the warning, asking for strength to continue delivering this message even though I knew it would cost me. Because it will cost me. I know that. People will call me crazy. People will say I'm fear-mongering. People will accuse me of being a conspiracy theorist, of damaging my reputation, of throwing away my career in The Chosen for some paranoid delusion. But I saw his face. I saw his tears. And I'd rather be called crazy by man than be called disobedient by God. Listen, I need to be honest with you about something. I'm scared. I'm genuinely terrified to be sharing this message. Do you know what happens to people who speak prophetic warnings in our comfortable Western Christianity? They get marginalized. They get dismissed. They get labeled as extremists. But you know what scares me more? The thought of staying silent. The thought of December 7th coming and going, and then in January, watching the news stories start to trickle in, seniors locked out of charitable giving, new software blocks, church donations, Christian organizations report, dramatic drop in support, and knowing I could have said something, knowing I saw it coming and chose comfort over courage. I can't do that. I won't do that. So I'm asking you again, like I asked yesterday, but with even more urgency, because we're now down to 2 days. Share this message. Post it everywhere. Send it to every senior you know. Email it, text it, print it out, and mail it if you have to. Because December 7th is the deadline, and after that, the trap springs shut, and deliverance becomes so much harder. And I need you to pray specifically tonight. Pray for discernment for every senior who's considering registering for this software. Pray that the Holy Spirit would give them a check in their spirit, a hesitation, a clear no, before they click submit. Pray for the scales to fall from eyes, for ears to be opened, for hearts to be softened to receive this warning. Pray for me too, because tomorrow night, Jesus is going to show me the consequences, and I don't know if I'm ready to see what happens to those who ignore the warning. But I have to look. I have to see, because you need to know the full truth. In the comments, I need to see evidence that this message is reaching people. Tell me you heard it. Tell me you're sharing it. Tell me you've warned the seniors in your life. Because right now, I feel like I'm shouting into a void, and I need to know that someone, somewhere is listening. The mark is still on you. You're still chosen to receive this. You didn't stumble onto this video by accident. The algorithm didn't randomly recommend it. God sovereignly orchestrated your presence here in this moment for this message. What you do with it is between you and Him. But I'm begging you, don't scroll past. Don't dismiss it. Don't wait until December 8th and then wish you'd paid attention. Act now. Share now. Warn now. We have 2 days. Tomorrow night at this same time, I'll be back with part 3. Jesus will show me the aftermath, the consequences, the devastation, and the hope. The remnant who stood firm, the warriors who refused the trap. But tonight, I just need you to understand, this is real. The boardroom meeting I witnessed, those people exist. The demonic consecration of the servers, it happened. The December 7th deadline, it's coming. And your response to this message might be the difference between freedom and bondage for someone you love. Don't take that lightly. I'll see you tomorrow night. Be ready. What He's going to show me next, it's going to be harder to hear than what I've shared so far. But it's necessary. All of it is necessary. It was December 6, 2025 at 12:15 a.m. when I didn't even make it to my prayer room before Jesus appeared in my bedroom doorway while my wife slept peacefully beside me. And His face was contorted with such grief that I actually gasped out loud. And He whispered, "Come. You need to see what tomorrow brings if they don't listen. You need to see both the judgment and the mercy." I carefully slid out of bed, my heart already racing. My wife stirred but didn't wake. I grabbed my robe and followed Jesus down the hallway, but we didn't go to the prayer room. Instead, He led me to the living room, and as soon as I crossed the threshold, reality shifted. We were no longer in my house. We were standing in what looked like a church, a large one, maybe a 1,000-seat sanctuary. But it was empty, except for about 40 people scattered throughout the pews, mostly seniors. Gray hair, weathered faces, some with walkers, some holding hands with spouses who looked equally fragile. "This is January 15th, Jesus said quietly, 38 days from now. This is a Wednesday night prayer meeting at Cornerstone Community Church in Ohio. Watch." An elderly man stood at the front, the pastor, I assumed, though he looked broken. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Brothers and sisters, I need to be honest with you about our situation. Last month, in December, 73% of our congregation registered for that financial protection software, the one with the December 7th deadline. We didn't know. We didn't understand what it meant." He paused, wiping his eyes. "As of last week, every single person who registered is now unable to make donations to the church. Their transactions are being flagged as potentially fraudulent and blocked. We've tried to appeal, but the process takes weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, our budget has collapsed. We can't pay our missionaries. We can't support the food bank. We had to cancel the building project that would have expanded our children's ministry. A woman in the third row stood up, sobbing. "Pastor, I've been tithing for 52 years. 52 years. And now some algorithm is telling me I can't give to my own church. I feel like I've been robbed, like someone stole my ability to serve God." Another voice from the back. We tried to warn people. Some of us saw the red flags, but everyone said we were being paranoid, that we were conspiracy theorists. And now look where we are. Jesus turned to me, and I saw tears coursing down his face again. "Multiply this scene by 10,000, he said. 10,000 churches across America alone. Hundreds of thousands of seniors who registered before December 7th, thinking they were protecting themselves, now discovering they've surrendered their freedom to be generous, their freedom to obey when I say give, their freedom to participate in my kingdom economy. Lord, this is devastating," I whispered. "It gets worse," he said grimly. "Watch." The scene shifted. Now we were in a small apartment. An elderly woman. I recognized her. She was the same one from my first vision, Mrs. Henderson. Sat on her couch with a laptop open. A video call was in progress. On the screen, a young couple with dirt-smudged faces and hollow eyes. "Mrs. Henderson, we understand." The young man on the screen was saying, "We know it's not your fault, but without your monthly support, we can't stay here. We can't continue the orphanage. We have 37 children depending on us. And if we don't make rent by the end of the month, they're going to shut us down and put these kids back on the streets." Mrs. Henderson was openly weeping. "I have the money," she kept saying. "I have it right here in my account. But every time I try to send it to you, it gets blocked. I've called them 17 times. 17 times. They keep saying they're reviewing it, that they'll get back to me, that it's for my protection. But these children need protection. They need food. They need..." Her voice broke completely. The young couple on the screen tried to comfort her, but I could see the despair in their eyes. They were going to lose everything. And Mrs. Henderson, who had faithfully supported them for 8 years, was powerless to help. Jesus' hand gripped my shoulder hard enough that it almost hurt. "Do you see what the enemy has done? He hasn't stopped people from having faith. He hasn't stopped them from wanting to serve me. He's just made it impossible for them to act on that faith. He's neutralized them, rendered them ineffective. They're believers in name only now, not by choice, but by design." "How many?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "How many missionaries will lose support? How many orphanages will close? How many?" "Thousands," Jesus interrupted. "Thousands of missionaries will have to come home. Hundreds of orphanages, medical clinics, schools, feeding programs, all funded primarily by faithful seniors who tithed and gave and supported kingdom work for decades. All of it will collapse between January and March of 2026 because the enemy successfully targeted the generation that carried the financial burden of global ministry." I felt sick, actually physically ill. My stomach churned, and I had to bend over, hands on my knees, breathing deeply. "Why are you showing me this?" I gasped. "Why do I need to see this level of devastation?" Jesus knelt beside me, his hand on my back. "Because you need to understand what's at stake. You need to understand that this isn't theoretical. This isn't abstract. Real people, real ministries, real lives hang in the balance. And you have one day, Jonathan, to sound the alarm before December 7th arrives." He helped me straighten up, and when I looked at his face, I saw something that terrified me more than anything I'd witnessed so far. I saw holy anger, not at me, not at the victims, but at the architects of this deception, at the demonic forces orchestrating it, at the principalities and powers that had been planning this attack for years. "Come," he said, his voice like steel now. "I'm not done. You need to see the judgment aspect. You need to understand that I don't allow this kind of evil to go unanswered." The scene shifted again, and suddenly we were back in that corporate boardroom I'd seen the night before. But this time it was different. The room was in chaos. Papers everywhere. People shouting. Phones ringing incessantly. Silverhair stood at the window, his face gray with shock, staring down at the street below where I could see flashing lights, police cars, maybe ambulances. How many? He was asking someone on his phone. His hand trembled. How many systems failed? What do you mean 30% of our servers crashed? That's impossible. We had backups. We had redundancies. He stopped talking, listening. His face went even more pale. Financial penalties? How much? No, that can't be right. That would bankrupt us. We'd lose everything. The woman with red framed glasses burst into the room. The lawsuit just hit. Class action. 50,000 seniors claiming we locked them out of legitimate transactions. The press is having a field day. Every major news outlet is running stories about the charity blocker software. Our stock is down 60%. 60% in 4 hours. Jesus watched this with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not satisfaction, exactly. More like justice being served. "I told you the enemy leaves fingerprints," he said to me. "I told you he's arrogant. By February, this company will be exposed. Their demonic connections will come to light. Criminal investigations will be launched. People will go to prison." "But Lord," I said, "that's months away. The damage will already be done. The missionaries will already be home. The orphanages will already be closed." "Yes," he agreed, and the pain returned to his voice. "That's the cost of ignoring warnings. That's what happens when my people prioritize convenience over discernment. But I want you to see this so you understand. I will avenge. I will bring justice. The enemy may win battles, but he doesn't win the war." He turned to face me fully, and the intensity in his eyes made me take a step back. "Now I'm going to show you something that will give you hope. I'm going to show you the remnant, the ones who heard the warning, the ones who refused to register, the ones who chose faith over fear." Instantly, we were somewhere else, a different church, smaller, maybe 200 seats, and it was packed, standing room only, but the atmosphere was completely different from the first church I'd seen. Where that one had been somber and broken, this one was alive with energy, with joy, with purpose. A woman in her 70s stood at a microphone during testimony time. "I almost did it," she was saying. "I almost registered for that software on December 6th. I had the webpage open. I had my account information ready to enter. But I saw this video, this actor from The Chosen, Jonathan Rumi, talking about a warning he'd received from Jesus. And something in my spirit just stopped me cold. The congregation murmured in agreement. I didn't register. And you know what? In January, when all those stories came out about people being locked out of giving to their churches, I was able to double my tithe. I was able to support 3 missionary families instead of just 1. I was able to be the church's largest donor during the crisis because I didn't surrender my freedom to some algorithm. People were standing, applauding, some crying. An elderly man stood next. My son thought I was crazy. He's an engineer, works in tech, and he tried to convince me that the software was legitimate, that I was being paranoid. We had a huge fight about it. I told him, I'd rather be vulnerable and free than safe and in bondage. He hung up on me. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. But last week, he called me back. He apologized. He said, Dad, you were right. I've been researching that company, and they're connected to organizations that actively oppose Christianity. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you. I'm sorry I called you paranoid. That phone call was worth every moment of doubt I felt in December. Jesus gestured around the room. This is the remnant, Jonathan. These are the ones who had ears to hear, the ones who chose to test the spirits instead of blindly trusting, the ones who remembered that my ways are not the world's ways. We watched as the pastor stood to speak. Church, what we're seeing is a dividing line, a separation. Jesus said he came not to bring peace, but a sword, to divide even families. This December 7th deadline has revealed who trusts God and who trusts the system. It's not about judging those who registered. Many of them are our brothers and sisters who made a mistake out of fear, but it's about recognizing that following Jesus requires discernment. It requires being willing to look foolish in the world's eyes. It requires choosing the narrow path, even when the broad path looks safer. The congregation erupted in amens and hallelujahs. Jesus turned to me, and for the first time in 3 nights, I saw him smile. Do you see? Even in judgment, there is mercy. Even in devastation, there is a remnant. Not everyone fell for the trap. Not everyone surrendered their freedom. And these, he gestured to the celebrating congregation, these will be the ones who carry the financial burden of my church through the next season. These will be the ones who support the missionaries, who fund the orphanages, who keep my work moving forward. How many, Lord? I asked. How many are in this remnant? His smile faded slightly. Not as many as I wish. Perhaps 20% of seniors who were targeted will refuse to register. 20% who will hear warnings, like yours, and heed them. But 20% is enough. I've always worked with a faithful few. Gideon's army, Noah's family, the remnant who didn't bow to Baal. I don't need multitudes. I need the faithful. He walked toward me until we were face to face. Jonathan, tomorrow night, our final meeting, I'm going to give you specific instructions. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm calling you to do, beyond just delivering this warning. But tonight, I need you to understand the full picture, the devastation for those who ignore the warning, and the triumph for those who heed it. Both are real. Both are coming. December 7th is the dividing line. Lord, what about December 8th? I asked. What about the people who see this message after the deadline? Is there anything they can do? His expression became infinitely compassionate. Yes, there's always something they can do. They can repent. They can close the accounts. They can start over. It won't be easy. There will be financial penalties, bureaucratic nightmares, spiritual warfare. But it's possible. Deliverance is always possible for those who truly want it. He paused, then added, but prevention is so much easier than cure. That's why you're delivering this warning now, while there's still time. That's why every share, every comment, every person who hears this message before December 7th matters so much. The church scene began to fade, and we were back in my living room. Jesus stood in front of me, his hand resting over my heart. "Feel that?" he asked. I did. My heart was racing, pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "That's not fear," he said. "That's holy urgency. That's the weight of the calling I've placed on you. Not just to warn about December 7th, but to be a voice for discernment in a church that has largely stopped practicing it." "I don't know if I'm strong enough," I admitted. "You're not," he said simply. "But I am, and I'm with you. Tomorrow night, I'll show you how this continues beyond December. I'll show you the long-term implications, and I'll give you the battle plan." He began to fade, but his voice lingered. "Rest now, Jonathan. You'll need your strength for what comes next. And remember, the remnant is forming. The faithful few are rising up. You're not alone in this." And then he was gone, and I was standing in my living room at 2:43 a.m., shaking like a leaf, tears streaming down my face. I didn't go back to bed. I went to my prayer room and spent the next 3 hours interceding, praying for every senior who would face the December 7th decision, praying for the remnant who would refuse the trap, praying for deliverance for those who had already registered, praying for strength to deliver the final part of this message tomorrow night, because tomorrow is December 6th, and December 7th, the deadline, is less than 24 hours away. Listen to me very carefully. If you're watching this on December 6th or earlier, you still have time. You can still refuse to register. You can still choose freedom over false security. You can still be part of the remnant that stands firm. But if you're watching this on December 7th or later and you already registered, don't despair. Deliverance is possible. It will be harder. Yes. It will require supernatural intervention. But Jesus specializes in the impossible. Here's what you need to do right now, tonight, before December 7th arrives. First, if you registered for any financial protection software that requires linking all your accounts, cancel it. Tonight. Right now. Don't wait. Don't second guess. Call them. Email them. Do whatever you need to. Do to revoke that registration before the deadline. Second, get on your face before God and ask Him directly, is this from you or from the enemy? Don't rely on logic alone. Don't rely on what sounds good or what authorities recommend. Ask the Holy Spirit for discernment and wait for His answer. Third, find other believers, mature, discerning believers, and ask for their input. Not just any Christians. Find the ones who have a track record of choosing God's ways over the world's ways, even when it costs them. Ask them what they sense in their spirit about this. Fourth, read your Bible. Specifically, read the passages about testing spirits, about being wise as serpents and innocent as doves, about the narrow path versus the broad path. Let Scripture be your guide, not convenience or fear. And fifth, share this message. We have less than 24 hours. Every senior who sees this before December 7th has a chance to choose wisely. Every family member who warns their elderly parents or grandparents could save them from months of bondage. Every pastor who shares this with their congregation could preserve their church's financial stability. Time is running out. In the comments, I need to hear from you. Tell me, have you registered for financial protection software? If so, are you canceling it? Have you warned the seniors in your life? Are you praying for discernment about this? Do you sense the urgency of this moment? Tomorrow night, December 6th, I'll share the final part of this message. Jesus will give me the battle plan, the long-term strategy, the the specific steps we need to take, not just to survive December 7th, but to thrive as the remnant church in the season that follows. But tonight, I just need you to understand, judgment and mercy are both real. Devastation and triumph are both coming. The question is, which side of that divide will you be on? The remnant is forming. Will you be part of it? It was December 6, 2025 at 3:33 a.m., and yes, I noticed the Trinity of Threes when Jesus appeared for the fourth and final time, but this time, he wasn't alone, and he wasn't weeping, and the atmosphere in my prayer room shifted from mourning to mobilization as he said, "Jonathan, the warning has been delivered. Now it's time to build the army." I'd been in the prayer room since midnight, couldn't sleep, couldn't rest, kept checking my phone, watching the messages pour in from the previous videos, thousands of comments, tens of thousands of shares, seniors canceling their registrations, family members having difficult conversations with elderly parents, pastors addressing their congregations. The warning was spreading, but I knew there was more. I could feel it in my spirit. This final encounter was going to be different. This wasn't just about December 7th anymore. This was about what comes after. When Jesus appeared, there was someone with him. An angel, I realized, though not like the cherubic figures in Renaissance paintings. This being was tall, maybe 7 feet, with armor that seemed to be made of light itself. A sword hung at his side, and his eyes burned with holy fire. "This is Michael," Jesus said simply, "the prince who stands guard over God's people. I've brought him tonight because what I'm about to tell you isn't just spiritual, it's warfare. And you need to understand the military precision required for what comes next." Michael nodded at me, but didn't speak. His presence alone was enough to make me feel simultaneously terrified and protected. Jesus gestured for me to sit, so I did, my notepad ready, my hand trembling. "Jonathan, December 7th is 12 hours away. By this time tomorrow, the trap will have sprung. Some will be caught in it, but many, because of your obedience, because of the warnings you've delivered, many will have escaped. The remnant will have formed." He paced in front of me, his hands clasped behind his back. But here's what most people don't understand. Spiritual warfare doesn't end with one victory. The enemy doesn't pack up and go home because we won a battle. He adapts. He evolves. He comes at us from different angles. December 7th is just the opening salvo. What comes next will require sustained resistance, sustained discernment, sustained faithfulness. "Lord, what are you saying? That there will be other attacks like this?" "Not like this, exactly," he said. "The enemy rarely uses the same tactic twice. But yes, there will be other systems, other programs, other solutions, designed to neutralize my people's effectiveness. Every few months, a new threat, a new convenience that comes with hidden chains. And each time, my people will need to be ready to test the spirits, to discern the trap, to choose freedom over false security." Michael spoke for the first time, and his voice was like thunder rolling across mountains. "The church has been asleep," he said, "for decades. Western Christianity has grown comfortable, complacent. They've forgotten they're in enemy territory. They've forgotten this is a war zone. December 7th is a wake-up call, but only if they choose to wake up." Jesus nodded in agreement. "Jonathan, I'm calling you to do more than just deliver warnings. I'm calling you to train warriors. I'm calling you to build a network of discerning believers who can recognize the enemy's tactics, who can sound alarms in their own communities, who can stand as watchmen on the wall. My mind was racing. Lord, I'm an actor. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a theologian. I'm not qualified to. He cut me off with a raised hand. We've already had this conversation. I don't call the qualified, but let me be specific about what I'm asking you to do. He counted on his fingers, and I wrote frantically. First, I want you to commit to a daily discipline. 30 minutes every morning before you check your phone, before you look at emails, before you engage with the world at all. 30 minutes in my presence, asking me one question. What is the enemy planning today? Where is the trap being set? Who needs to be warned? Just 30 minutes, I asked. Consistency matters more than duration, he said. Most Christians can't sustain 2-hour daily prayer marathons, but everyone can do 30 minutes. And if 30,000 believers committed to 30 minutes of watchman prayer every morning, the enemy's plans would be disrupted before they could gain momentum. Second, he continued, I want you to create a community, not just a social media following, an actual network of believers who are committed to discernment, to testing spirits, to warning each other when threats emerge, a place where someone in Florida can alert someone in Oregon about a new deceptive program, where a senior in Texas can ask, does this seem right to you? And get honest, spirit-led feedback from mature believers. I nodded, writing furiously. Third, I want you to teach practical discernment. Most Christians have no idea how to test spirits. They don't know the questions to ask, the red flags to look for, the patterns the enemy uses. You need to break it down into simple, repeatable steps that even a brand new believer can apply. Like what, Lord? What are those steps? He smiled, and it was the smile of a teacher pleased that his student asked the right question. Here's the framework. 5 questions every believer should ask about any new system, program, or initiative before they participate. Question 1. Does this increase my dependence on God or decrease it? My spirit leads to greater reliance on me, not on systems or algorithms or human wisdom. Question 2. Does this increase my freedom or decrease it? The enemy always trades freedom for security. Always. If you're surrendering control, surrendering choices, surrendering autonomy in exchange for protection or convenience, be very, very suspicious. Question 3. Who profits from this? Follow the money. Follow the power. If the people behind an initiative have a history of opposing Christianity, opposing freedom, opposing faith, that tells you everything you need to know. Question 4. What does my spirit say? Not your emotions, not your logic, your spirit, that deep inner knowing that comes from the Holy Spirit dwelling within you. If you feel hesitation, pay attention to it. If you feel peace, that's usually me. If you feel pressure and urgency and act now or else, that's usually the enemy. Question 5. What do mature believers say? Not just any Christians. Mature ones. The ones who have a track record of choosing my ways over the world's ways, even when it costs them. Seek counsel from them, not from the crowd. I was writing so fast, my hand cramped, but I didn't dare stop. If something fails, even one of those 5 questions, Jesus said, don't do it. Walk away. It's that simple. And if it fails multiple questions, run. Run as fast as you can in the opposite direction. Michael stepped forward, his hand resting on his sword hilt. The enemy is cunning, the angel said, but he's not as clever as he thinks. He has patterns. He has limitations. He can only work through deception, through lies, through manipulation. Truth always exposes him eventually. The key is teaching God's people to recognize the patterns before they fall into the trap. Jesus put his hand on my shoulder and I felt strength flow into me, literal, physical strength, like electricity through my nervous system. Fourth, he said, I want you to challenge your viewers, not just to listen, not just to share, but to act. Specifically, I want you to issue a 30-day challenge starting tomorrow, December 7th, running through January 6th. 30 days of the morning discipline I described. 30 minutes of watchman prayer, asking me what the enemy is planning, who needs to be warned. And those who complete the challenge, I asked. They'll be different people, he said simply. 30 days of consistent time in my presence, asking the right questions, listening for my voice. That rewires neural pathways, that breaks old patterns, that creates new spiritual reflexes. They'll become the core of the discernment network I'm building. Fifth, and his voice became more intense, I want you to mark the timeline. December 7th is the deadline, but January 7th, 30 days later, is when the consequences become undeniable. That's when the news stories start breaking. That's when churches realize they've lost their funding. That's when missionaries start coming home. I want you to do a follow-up on January 7th, showing exactly how accurate these warnings were. Why, Lord? Why is it important to say, I told you so? His expression became fierce. Because credibility matters for future warnings. Because when the next attack comes, and it will come, people need to remember that this wasn't conspiracy theory, this wasn't paranoia, this was prophetic accuracy. They need to remember that you heard from me, that you delivered truth and that truth was vindicated. Michael spoke again. Prophets in Scripture were validated by the fulfillment of their prophecies. Nothing has changed. Your credibility for the next warning depends on people seeing that this warning was accurate. Jesus walked to my small table and picked up my Bible, flipping through it with purpose. Sixth, you need to address the Scripture that backs all of this up, because people will accuse you of fear-mongering, of being unbiblical, of stirring up trouble. You need to show them that everything I've told you has biblical precedent. He handed me the open Bible, his finger marking several passages. Ezekiel 33, he said, the watchman on the wall. If the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, and the people are not warned, and the sword comes and takes any person from among them, he is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at the watchman's hand. Jonathan, you're the watchman. You saw the sword coming. If you didn't blow the trumpet, I would require the blood of the deceived at your hand. I felt the weight of that settle on my shoulders like a mantle. First, John 4:1, he continued, test the spirits, not suggest they test them, not recommend they test them, command them. This isn't optional for believers. Discernment is mandatory. Matthew 10:16, be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Wisdom requires understanding how the enemy operates. Innocence doesn't mean naivety. Revelation 13, the mark of the beast, the economic control, the inability to buy or sell without the mark. People think that's far future, but the systems are being built right now, incrementally, through helpful programs and protective software that condition people to accept economic control in exchange for security. So this is connected to end times? I asked. Everything is connected to end times, he said. We've been in the last days since my resurrection. But yes, What's happening now is preparing the infrastructure for what comes later. The church needs to recognize these incremental steps so they don't wake up one day shocked that they're living in Revelation 13. He closed the Bible and looked at me with such intensity I felt it in my bones. Seventh, and finally, I need you to issue the urgent deadline. Today is December 6th. The deadline is December 7th at midnight. Anyone watching this before that deadline can still cancel, still escape the trap. But after midnight tonight, it becomes exponentially harder. What about people watching after the deadline? I asked. Tell them deliverance is possible, but will require action. They need to. Step 1. Repent. Acknowledge they made a mistake, that they trusted the system more than they trusted me. Step 2. Revoke the agreement. Call the company. Send certified letters. Do whatever is legally necessary to cancel the registration. Step 3. Close the accounts if necessary. Yes, it's inconvenient. Yes, it's a hassle. But freedom is worth it. Step 4. Get spiritual covering. They need deliverance prayer from mature believers who understand spiritual warfare. Those accounts were demonically consecrated, remember? Simply closing them isn't always enough. The spiritual doors need to be closed too. Step 5. Commit to the 30-day Watchman Challenge as part of their recovery. They need to rebuild their discernment muscles. Jesus stepped back, and the light around him intensified. Jonathan, in a few moments I'm going to leave, and this will be our last direct conversation about December 7th. But this isn't the end of what I'm doing through you. This is the beginning. The watchman calling I've placed on you doesn't expire when the clock strikes midnight tonight. This is your assignment for this season. Tears started flowing down my face. Lord, what if I fail? What if people don't listen? What if some won't listen? He said gently. I told you that on the first night. This message isn't for everyone. It's for the remnant. It's for those who have ears to hear. Your job isn't to convert everybody. Your job is to deliver the message faithfully and let me sort out who receives it. Michael drew his sword, not threateningly, but ceremonially, and held it vertically in front of his face. You're not fighting alone, the angel said. The hosts of heaven are engaged in this battle. Every time you speak truth, every time you sound an alarm, every time you call God's people to discernment, we're fighting in the heavenly realms. To break through the deception and interference the enemy has established. Jesus moved toward me one final time and placed both hands on my head. I'm commissioning you now, Jonathan, not just for this warning, but for the calling of watchmen. You'll need to stay sensitive to my spirit, stay alert to enemy tactics, stay willing to look foolish in the world's eyes. But I'll be with you. My grace will be sufficient. My strength will be made perfect in your weakness. I felt something shift inside me, a settling, a solidifying of purpose and calling. Go now, Jesus said. You have 12 hours until the deadline. Deliver this final message. Issue the challenge. Mark the timeline. And then watch as I separate the remnant from the deceived, the faithful from the foolish. Will I see you again, Lord? I asked desperately. He smiled. You see me every time you look for me. You hear me every time you listen. I never left Jonathan. I've always been right here. You're just more aware of my presence now. Stay in that awareness. Live from that place of constant connection. That's how watchmen function. And then he and Michael faded, and I was alone in my prayer room at 5:17 a.m. on December 6th. with the most important 12 hours of this season stretching before me. I sat there for a long time, just processing. Then I began to pray, and as I prayed, I felt the Holy Spirit giving me specific words for you, for everyone watching this. If you're watching this before midnight on December 7th, you've been given a gift, the gift of warning, the gift of time to choose wisely. Don't squander it. Don't assume you can wait. Cancel any financial protection software registrations right now, this moment. Don't finish this video and tell yourself you'll do it later. Do it now. If you're watching this after December 7th, don't despair. Deliverance is available, but you have to want it more than you want convenience. You have to be willing to fight for your freedom. Follow the 5 steps Jesus gave. Repent, revoke, close accounts if needed, get spiritual covering, commit to the 30-day challenge. If you're a family member of a senior who registered, don't shame them. Don't say, "I told you so." Come alongside them with compassion and help them through the deliverance process. This is spiritual warfare, and we need to fight together, not against each other. If you're a pastor, address this from the pulpit. Don't be afraid of looking foolish. Don't worry about being called a conspiracy theorist. Your job is to protect the sheep, and there are wolves prowling around your flock right now, dressed as financial advisors and helpful software. And if you're part of the remnant, if you heard the warning and heeded it, if you refused to register, if you chose faith over fear, then step into your calling. You're part of the discernment network God is building. You're a watchman. Start your 30-minute morning discipline tomorrow, December 7th. Ask God every day, what is the enemy planning? Who needs to be warned? And when he shows you, be faithful to sound the alarm. Here's the practical 30-day challenge starting December 7th and running through January 6th. Every morning, before anything else. 30 minutes in God's presence. Ask, what is the enemy planning today? Ask, who needs to be warned? Write down what you sense. Share warnings appropriately with your community. At the end of 30 days, on January 7th, come back here and comment on what God showed you, how your discernment developed, what warnings you were able to sound. I'm going to do a follow-up video on January 7th showing exactly how accurate these warnings were, documenting the news stories, the consequences, the vindication of this prophetic word. And I want to hear your testimonies of how God used you during these 30 days. In the comments right now, I need you to tell me, are you committing to the 30-day Watchman Challenge? If you registered for financial protection software, have you canceled it? Have you warned the seniors in your life? Do you recognize your calling as part of the remnant? This is the final part of the December 7th warning, but it's not the end of the story. It's the beginning of a movement of believers who refuse to be deceived, who choose discernment over convenience, who are willing to look foolish in the world's eyes in order to stand faithful in God's eyes. The enemy thought December 7th would be his victory. He thought he'd successfully trapped the generation that carries the financial burden of global ministry. But because of obedient servants who delivered warnings, because of believers who had ears to hear, because of the remnant that chose faith over fear, his plan has been disrupted, not completely thwarted. Some will still fall into the trap, but significantly disrupted. And that's what faithful obedience looks like in spiritual warfare. We don't win every battle perfectly, but we show up, we fight, we warn, we stand, and slowly, incrementally, We push back the darkness. You've been marked. You didn't find this message by accident. God sovereignly brought you here, to this moment, to receive this warning and to step into this calling. What you do next is between you and Him. But I'm begging you, don't scroll past this. Don't dismiss it. Don't wait until December 8th to wish you'd acted. We have 12 hours. 12 hours until midnight. 12 hours to cancel registrations, to warn loved ones, to choose freedom over false security, and then 30 days to build the discernment muscle that will carry us through whatever comes next. Because something is always coming next. The enemy doesn't rest. He doesn't take vacations. He's relentless in his attacks against God's people. But we serve a God who is more relentless in his love, more strategic in his planning, more powerful in his protection. And he's raising up an army of watchmen who will stand on the wall, who will see the sword coming, who will blow the trumpet loud and clear. Are you one of them? Will you answer the call? The clock is ticking. Midnight is coming. Choose wisely. Choose freedom. Choose faith. And I'll see you on January 7th when we celebrate the vindication of these warnings and the testimonies of the remnant who stood firm. Until then, stay alert, stay discerning, stay faithful. The battle has just begun, but we know how it ends. We win.